Hi, good morning everyone, and thank you for coming. Like Mark mentioned before, Chapter kind of sponsored this event, and this is the first one we've done as Chapter. Just to give you a little bit of intro in terms of who Chapter is, you've probably all heard of Jobs Go Public, or lots of you may have. And I started working in Jobs Go Public a year and a half ago, heading up the education team there. Jobs Go Public had worked with education organisations for a number of years because of their, obviously, the links through the local authorities at the time. As things moved on, the education service to schools and universities, etc., moved on too. But as we found, and I know lots of you work with schools and in schools, that actually schools are quite specific. So what we wanted to do is have a specific division dedicated to education, where we were offering not only products from Jobs Go Public, such as the job board, the audience, etc., the applicant tracking system, but also a real service element of what we offer. My experience, I've been working with teacher and school recruitment for many years. I've been doing this for a long time, safeguarding, safer recruitment, etc. And I used to work for a local authority, so I was in charge of teacher recruitment strategy for many years. So I've been around the block, and I was here when there first was recruitment strategy managers years ago, when there was lots and lots of money, and it was all very centralised from the local authority. So things have really moved on. And one of the things that I've found within education is that schools don't necessarily have the necessary expertise anymore. It used to be very local authority led. There used to be centralised kind of expertise there, and they would lead on teacher recruitment strategy. And whereas now, with obviously all the changes, the actual moving schools on to sort of the next stage in recruitment and helping them formulate recruitment strategy, schools, education organisations need a little bit more support. So essentially that's where Chapter was born from, is actually wanting to help schools look at their strategy, look at the things that they need to put in place and what they can actually put in place, and obviously providing the services around that. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Current landscape, I don't think we need to labour that too much. I think everyone knows how challenging it is. We're going to look at what you can do. So our approach in Chapter is sort of three main areas. Finding your audience, knowing who they are, where they are, how you can target them, when you need to target them. Telling your story, and we've heard a lot about EVP, employer value proposition, but essentially that is your story, the story about what you're about as an organisation, what somebody can expect from you, and creating a happy ending. So excuse the pun around linking up to Chapter and the brand, but essentially having a better process, a good candidate experience, and therefore in the future being able to have people readily looking for jobs, readily looking to work for your organisation. I won't labour this as well because Mark's already gone over, but what you wanted to know. So lots of the questions that were coming through very much hopefully will be covered briefly in my presentation, and obviously the information that you'll get out after this in terms of the white paper, and the white papers that are on your table now should also address some of these issues. Current landscape. So vacancies are on the increase. We've seen, the DfE have missed their targets for ITT for I think the fifth year running. Retention is becoming a real issue. More leavers, more teachers leaving to go overseas. There's lots of issues that we know about. Also, the desire for portfolio careers. So teachers are staying in the same job less time now. So they want to move on. Actually, they're often encouraged to. So, if they've been working in Key Stage 1 for a long time, they're encouraged for their career progression to move to Key Stage 2. But then what does that mean for schools? Whereas previously you might be quite happy for schools, for teachers to develop and move on because you knew there was more coming through the door. In actual fact, that's not so commonplace now. Costs are increasing versus budget cuts, advertising costs, recruitment costs increasing. I speak to many schools and trusts, and their recruitment budgets are getting, they didn't have any to start with. So where they're getting the money from is from other budget lines. So essentially it's becoming a real issue. And the money that's being spent, they don't know, they know it's not working in maybe the way that they want it to work or the way it's worked before. So that's becoming a real issue as well. And there's a real big shift in the labour market, how people actually find jobs. They look for jobs. Human behaviour. Teachers they're just humans, same as us, and the way they behave with their online presence, their digital footprint and all of those kind of things, they're behaving in a very different way, which is really making a difference in how they look for jobs. And what I've found and what we've found in Chapter is that schools and the education market haven't necessarily moved their thinking on to match how teachers are actually looking for jobs. Don't get me wrong, if I could say that that was the only issue with teacher recruitment, I would be very happy. But I know that there's not a lot of, there's regional issues around teacher shortages, etc. But there are some real quick wins. So what do teachers actually want? We did a survey of 1,500 teachers, and out of those, 80% said they prefer to apply online. So lots of the teachers now, they want to be able to access an application form, they want to be able to apply online, and that means a web-based form, not a Word document form. And this is our feedback that we were having from teachers. There was an increase recently of 36% of applications coming via a mobile device. How many of you have an application that people can start on the bus, whereas they have to go home and open a laptop to get the Word document up? These are kind of questions to sort of take back. Only 1% reported having a positive recruitment experience. So out of those 1,500 teachers, only 1% said that they had one positive experience. And that's for different factors. It could be, the lack of communication, the poor application process, the interview process is too grueling, all of different reasons. But that poor experience that the majority are having, that gets fed back. Teachers, have a great network. So it's a really great thing. One way it's a threat because they'll speak if you're not very good at it, and it's a real opportunity because they'll speak if you are very good at it. So just think about that. 98% of teachers said they look at the school's website before applying for a job. I would probably say to you that 2% that don't is probably the people that know the school very well. So, you need to make sure that your website has a great platform that people can actually come to find out what it's like to work for you. Not just a page, just of vacancies, but some real good information about what it is, why I work for you, maybe some quotes, testimonials from teachers and things like that. We heard earlier about the importance of having a career site. As I said, 85% share their recruitment experience. So, all of those, that 99% that had a bad one, would have shared it with other teachers. And 91% start their job search on Google. So Google is becoming a verb, isn't it? You Google where you want to go for dinner, you Google how to... And even if you know a website that you want to go to, you Google it first. So it's really important to make sure that you're addressing your kind of online presence, your digital footprint around these kind of things, to have a website that is appearing in Google, to use the kind of the power that is the Google advertising, to make sure that you're getting at the top of the searches when people are coming up, that actually people searching your school, you're actually appearing in, ideally the top 3, or definitely the first page. So what can you do? Finding your audience. As I said, 91% start their job search on Google. So it's a real key stat actually for me, but because if you can actually target and get your organisation's career site vacancy page at the top of Google, then essentially, you're captivating the same audience as the big job boards are captivating. They're already getting that kind of interest. So instead of paying them for their audience and for them to be at the top, you can actually invest in getting yourself at the top, which obviously, one, will increase the applications because they're not then guided off and looking at all different job adverts, but also, over time, you'll have that increased traffic, which will have your organic Google position increase, so you'll keep coming up at the top. Some senior leaders. This is another real key stat for me. 90% of senior candidates will only read a job advert if it's actually placed in front of them. And this is key for when you're looking for your head teachers or your senior leaders, even your middle managers. If they will only look at a job advert, they're not actively out looking on job boards. Okay, so 90% of them will only look if it's placed in front of them. Now this is really key for your social media kind of audience, because if you have a lot of people, you increase your followers with your social media audience, they will see your advert as and when they appear. So it's really important. 63% research a school on social media before they apply for a job. Now if your school is not on social media and can't be found in any way, what impression does that give the candidate of your school? When computing and being digital is the forefront, Google in schools, all of these different programs now. What does it say about your school if you're not actually on social media? And it can say, a lot of things and not necessarily great. Whereas if they can find your school on social media, they can start understanding the culture, seeing what's going on a little bit more. So it's really important. 96%, as I said, check the school website before applying a job, so make sure that you have those details on there. I also speak to a lot of schools and they say, well, actually, people want to work here. And say, okay, how do they apply for your jobs? Oh, well, they have to go to this other website, but how do they know how to get to that? How do they find your jobs online? So even if you don't necessarily have problems attracting school teachers, which is a great place to be, if they do want to work for you because you've got a great reputation, where are your vacancies held? And that's really key as well, because people can't easily find your job. They won't hunt nowadays. They're very, people are lazy. Human behaviour's changed. People want to find it with 1 or 2 clicks. Media response. So, we used to be in a situation where schools would advertise on the local authority job board. It used to be the council job board, and it was great, it used to work. We've moved on now where it's not necessarily local authority job boards, although there are some still providing that to schools, but it's more kind of mainstream job boards, and that's where we are. So how do you know? And they cost a lot of money. Jobs Go Public is our job board that we provide, but there's TES, eTeach, a number of different job boards, and they are expensive. And so how do you make sure that what you're spending is working? Do you track where your applications are coming from? Okay, I think the last stat was something like 35% of the answers given on the application form where you ask, where did you see this job, is actually accurate. Because lots of times people would just put the school website because it's the thing they thought of. It's not necessarily the real key data that you need to drive your investment decisions in the future. So much money, you have to account for every single penny spent for pupil premium and sports funding, etc. And yet when it comes to recruitment, it's kind of, you put the advert in and you sort of hope for the best. And, if you get somebody, that's great. But you have no idea where they come from. And that's really key in terms of driving your future strategy and your future spend and especially return on investment. Building your own audience, and I think this is one of the key kind of golden threads from today, is talking about there's so many tools now that schools and organisations can actually use to build your own audience. You don't have to then pay somebody else for their expertise to do that. So whether it be supply or whether it be a job board for permanent recruitment, there are so many different ways of doing it yourself, and it is around building that audience for the future. If you pay a lot of money to attract teachers, which schools do, generally what happens in sort of 95% of the time is that you pay to attract them. If you're lucky, you'll get 2 or 3 good candidates, 1 gets appointed, and then that's it with the others. Then you have to pay the same amount to do the same attraction next time. What I'm suggesting is if you have different functions in place, such as job alerts, where they can sign up to register their interest in your school, ways of capturing their details, their interest at the point of when you've already, you paid for that attraction, then you can reuse their details again later on, but for free. And this is what agencies do very well. They get hold of a teacher's name, and then they will contact them and keep them warm until they manage to place them. And so having a function where you can actually send jobs to teachers or other staff, and it may be via your social media channels, it may be via your your job page where they can sign up for vacancies from you, a newsletter that goes out to them, but somewhere on your website that if you're paying to attract them to you, that they can sign up to make sure they're kept engaged with you. And this is coming back to that talent community again. Silver medalists, and again, if you've interviewed 2 or 3 people and they're all good, that would be great, especially maths teachers or physics teachers. You can sell them yourself, make some money. Again, keep them warm, keep them engaged, and make sure that you're then maybe sharing them with other schools if you work in a trust, in a group, or even back to your local authority. If they do have a talent pool, refer them back to the talent pool. And it's all around keeping this and building this audience for the future. So maximising your return on investment now to actually save money and actually make it much more effective for the future. So social media, we had a conversation, it's true, I think the schools have moved on, education sectors move on slightly, but it did used to be, social media was a real dirty word in schools. There was a real safeguarding, don't touch Facebook, it was all about safeguarding, and when social media first came into it, it was about safeguarding pupils, being safe online, etc. And then obviously, schools had Facebook pages and they had negative comments from parents, and they quickly, got rid of those channels. I think we've moved on a lot since then, and this is quite a nice quote. We don't have a choice whether we do social media. The question is how well we do it. And as we've heard, social media is very powerful in making sure that you get your key messages about your school out there, differentiating your organisation. When someone sees an advert, how do they know against someone else's advert which one they want to apply for? Okay, it's about that differentiation, and social media works extremely well for that. One, getting adverts out to people, but actually letting people know about your culture and what it is to work for you. So benefits of social media, it does save time because you can instantly share jobs, okay? You can reach your candidates faster. So a number of things that you can do around social media. It works obviously only if you have the followers. So you need to make sure that you have something in there where you're building up your followers to make sure that you're reaching your candidates. And that happens over time. That's not something you can pay to boost your followers, and there's lots of things you can do, but it's having that pull and it's building it up over time. You reach passive candidates, and this is a real change in the job seeker behaviour, because, like I said, people are lazy or becoming lazy with the digital age, and they want adverts sent to them. They want things given to them, put in front of them. They're not necessarily actively looking in the same way as they used to be, and especially at key recruitment points. We were saying that actually there's a huge rise in the number of vacancies advertised in September because the failing to recruit from last summer, and lots of schools say we need to get in there quick. But actually placing adverts on job boards this time of year, teachers have just started back. So unless they've come back and they're extremely unhappy and something's happened in their first week, they're probably not as active as they would be around January, March time. So it's around matching what you're doing as an organisation to recruit with what is expected in terms of the job seeking behaviour. But obviously with social media, it's a passive channel. So if they're not actively looking, they still get to see your roles. You can engage with your ideal audience, so you can target, if you're doing social media advertising, you can actually target people who have got teacher in their profile. So it's very targeted advertising, which makes it extremely cost effective, and you can actually promote your employer brand out. So it's about those continual messages, not just an advert, it's a continual messages about why it's so good to work for you. And things like videos, testimonials, things you're doing with your staff wellbeing, conferences, CPD, all of those key messages say something about your organisation. And it works. 73% have hired through social media, so it is definitely something for the future. Lots of schools aren't necessarily using it in the right way for recruitment at the moment, so it can get you ahead of other schools that are slightly further behind. So the big three: Facebook, and that's the ages groups there. LinkedIn is better for the senior candidates, and Twitter as well. So Twitter's great for sharing things that are happening in the school. So lots of schools have Twitter accounts, they're sharing things happening in the classroom. And again, it gives a real good impression of the school. So LinkedIn, great for advertising jobs because it is actually a real recruitment tool. So it's obviously a professional social media platform, but it is driven for recruitment purposes. Searching and directly contacting candidates that you can do. You can run an up-to-date company page, so you can have your school page on there. And especially for senior recruitment, you'll have a lot more people, if you look at the audience, have a lot more people with a senior position sharing information about their school, etc. So if you build that network up from your school, thinking about 90% will only look at an advert if it's placed in front of them, that's a real key channel for you. Okay, Facebook. So Facebook's that dirty word that people didn't want to use before, and a lot of schools do avoid it simply because of the way that people can post negative comments on there. But it is a really great way of targeting teachers because it is a very social channel. Lots of teachers have, obviously a great network of other teachers, friends, and if you can actually get people to sign up and follow you on Facebook, sharing jobs, sharing information, there's lots of reposting and sharing of that with other teachers. So it's a great channel to use. I'll send these round so you don't have to necessarily take all this down. And Twitter, again, great for advertising, great for a school account, really good for employer brand messages, Twitter. And you can obviously follow different hashtags, follow different conversations, engage, reply. And where I've seen some really great examples of Twitter is where it's not just been one person in the school. On our roundtable discussion, it was about resources and having the time to do all of this. But actually within, within the boundaries of policies and procedures, actually let more than one person within the school have access to post on Twitter and post on Facebook is really great, because individuals, teachers like to post what they're doing in their classroom, within the parameters of what's allowed. But actually it's a really great way of sharing the load. And teachers like doing that. They share it with parents, and again, it gives you their better social media footprint when people are looking for you online. So if you found your right audience, you know where they are, and hopefully over time building your own audience, so you're not paying for somebody else's audience always. Telling the story, what's your message, what's your employer value proposition. The amount of schools that I go to, and it's really hard to think about it. It's like being in an interview and says, oh, what's your strengths? Tell me your strengths. And you sort of go a bit blank and you can't really think. It's the same thing when you talk to head teachers and governors and staff about their school. Oh, I don't know, we do this really well. We've got a great CPD programme. But actually there's some real things to go back and really think about. What makes this school special? Speak to your staff. Ask them, why is it you like working here? What is it you don't like about working here? And obviously, see if you address it, and that's a real, a good point for retention. But, things like, I went to an academy trust the other day and they said, we always, whenever we offer a job, we always, the person always accepts. We have a 100% rate, nobody ever drops out. And I said, well, why would that be? And they said, because we have a great interview day. And they were very passionate about the interview day and how it was, very welcoming and warm, and they had, lots of meeting the staff, and because it says something about how they're treated as staff in the school. And that is a great message to get out to people. Because if somebody's looking at two adverts and one says, and you will experience a great interview day, this is what we do, they know what to expect on the day, against somebody that, is just, we want an outstanding practitioner, which school would you apply to? And so it's really important to really kind of pull out those key messages about what you do well in school and get them out to the market, tell your story. So before you even place an advert, think about when the candidate will be online, especially if you're using social media. When is it they'll be online? Or if you're using a job board, when is it teachers when will they be looking? There's no point in paying a huge amount for an advert when there's not, that people aren't looking for the job at that point. You probably want to use a different channel. What benefits would be most important to them? So if you're thinking about a middle leadership post, is it someone's first leadership post, first management post? What would be important to them? Is it because they've got that there's more than one person in the department sharing that load at management level? It could be a teacher. You're looking for a teacher or an NQT, and it's a free-form entry school. So it means that there's two experienced teachers in the same year group that will help them plan. All of those things that schools actually know are important to teachers, really pull it out and have that in your advert and information. What type of person are you looking for? So we talked about cultural fit and making sure that they fit the culture, and that's really important. So the language and the kind of incentives and the information you're giving needs to be matched. And are you targeting both active and passive candidates? And we've spoken about this because people, even if they are looking for a job, aren't necessarily looking in the same, in the same way on the same job board. I think there's an average of 18 different sources that people look at when looking for a role now, and teachers are no different from that. So it's making sure that you're targeting best you can all avenues. When it comes to an advert, 81% said they wouldn't apply if the advert is badly written. It's quite hard to write a good advert. It's quite hard to know what you're doing and what they're looking for. But it is absolutely crucial. So if you're paying, a lot of money, small fortune to advertise on a job board and attract the people, then in actual fact, you could fail at that hurdle if the advert's badly written. You have on average 10 seconds to grab someone's attention, because within that 10 seconds they'll look at the advert and they will make a decision whether they're going to apply for you. So again, it's about the structure of the advert. And I will get these out to you, so I know I'm running a bit over. So the top tips there that will be sent out to you, but there's some, generally it shouldn't be too lengthy. Avoid long lists of requirements around we want someone outstanding practitioner, strong leadership skills, great at marking, that kind of thing. That you want to think about the advert as you selling the role to the person. When they're in the interview, that's them selling themselves to you. So then after that, so you've found your audience, you've told them a good story and they've applied or they want to apply. Again, this is the third part where people fall down and you lose candidates in terms of the application process. When did you last test your process? When did you last try and apply for one of your own jobs? And I would urge every single person who's responsible for recruitment to go back and find your job on Google and try and apply for your job. Because if you get frustrated, you will be losing candidates at the same process. 40% hadn't applied due to a faulty application method. 81% they prefer using an online form, but 22% said they wouldn't apply unless it was online. And again, when it comes back to, what does this say about your organisation? If you haven't got an online method, but you're expecting your teachers to be computer literate, use it very ICT in the curriculum, etc., but yet your application process is very traditional, what does it say about your organisation? Same as social media. So as I said, apply for one of your jobs. Think about every single click to find your job or apply is an opportunity for someone to lose a candidate. So just go through and have a look. How many clicks does it take to actually apply for your job? How easy is it to find your job on your website, on Google, on other job boards that you use, and then try and apply? It's really a powerful thing to do. So 4 things to do tomorrow. Google your organisation, see how you come up. There's a thing called Glassdoor now. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but where you can be rated as an employer. It's really important. It's becoming much more, much more important in terms of people's decisions about whether they apply to you. And schools are not protected from this either. You'll be on there or potentially on there. Ask current teachers to review your job adverts. Ask them, does that appeal to them? What is it they would like to see in the job adverts, and what is it they love about the school? Try and apply for one of your jobs, and obviously make sure that your website has enough information on there. You don't need a huge elaborate career site, but you do need some information on there which at least acknowledges what it's like to work here, or some sort of career site. And like I said, make sure that your vacancies are easy to find. Even if teachers want to apply for your school, they need to know how to. That's really important as well. I would urge you, don't wait. We're very reactive in education. So when the job arises, we'll post an advert because we haven't had time to think about it on probably the way we've always done it. When it doesn't work the first time, we'll go back with a second time. When it doesn't work the third time, we'll go to an agency. And that seems to be the general cycle within schools and education at the moment. So I would urge you, plan ahead. People will look for, in terms of social media, your employer branding, get your messages out there early, start building up this audience. So when you are paying to attract people, that you're retaining them, so it's actually not wasted. Even if they're not applying to this particular role, you can actually get them in the future, so building up your own audience. Establish your EVP. So one of the questions was around retaining staff as well. So your employer value proposition isn't just for attracting staff, it's basically your culture, what you are, what your offer is to employees. And so actually, even if you're a teacher that, in your classroom, if you're having a bad week, a bad month, a bad term, you might be working in a department where you're not particularly happy, but your EVP and the continual messages that you put out actually can help them feel a little bit more part of a school or a culture where they do want to stay, that they do feel valued. And so it's a really important tool for retention as well. There's no point in establishing an EVP and pretending out to you on your adverts that's what you're about, because as soon as someone starts, they will leave. So it has to be intrinsic to your organisation. But many schools and organisations, they have a great EVP already. It's just verbalising that and making sure that you're telling the story well. And treat candidates well. So in terms of the process, do you do regret management? Do you tell people, this is what the next stage is? Do you contact them? If they've started an application but they didn't finish it, then do you contact them and ask them why? What was it about the process that puts them off? That's really powerful as well. And you know, it's a great way of obviously building up the EVP, treating them well, and that word of mouth. 86% share their recruitment experience, so you know you could be missing out on a huge sort of word of mouth promotion.